Hey Gemini, can you generate a horror story about a family and their kid?
The silence in the nursery was deafening. Mark stared at the baby monitor, the tiny rise and fall of baby Emily's chest barely visible in the grainy night vision. Beside him, Sarah sniffled, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "She's just sleeping, love," Mark whispered, his voice rough with exhaustion. He reached for her hand, his touch tentative. It had been like this for weeks, ever since Emily was born. The joy of finally having a child after years of trying had quickly soured into a bitter cocktail of anxiety and resentment. Sarah pulled her hand away, the faint scent of lavender hand cream lingering in the air. "Don't you get it, Mark? She's not normal. She never cries, never fusses. It's like she's not even there." Mark sighed. He'd heard this 1,000 times. He knew Sarah was exhausted, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in their comfortable, predictable life. But he couldn't shake off the unease that clung to him like a shroud. Emily was different, unnaturally calm, with unnervingly intense blue eyes that seemed to follow your every move. "Maybe she's just a good baby," he offered weakly, the familiar argument falling flat. "Good babies cry, Mark. They need you. They make you feel needed." Sarah's voice cracked. "I feel like I'm taking care of a doll." The tension in their once happy home was palpable. Every sleepless night, every silent feeding, every unanswered coo widened the chasm between them. Mark buried himself in work, the long hours a welcome escape from the oppressive silence of their house. Sarah, isolated and exhausted, retreated further into herself, her resentment towards Emily growing with each passing day. One evening, as Mark was leaving for yet another late meeting, he found Sarah in the living room, staring at a framed photo on the mantelpiece. It was a picture of her grandmother, a woman she barely remembered, who had died when Sarah was a child. "Look," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "Look at her eyes." Mark looked at the faded photograph. The woman in the picture had the same startling blue eyes as Emily, a shade so intense it seemed to pierce through the years. "It's just a coincidence," he said, but the words felt hollow even to his own ears. That night, unable to sleep, Mark found himself drawn to the attic. He rummaged through old boxes, searching for anything that might shed light on Sarah's grandmother. He found a dusty diary tucked away in a trunk. The entries were sparse, written in a spidery hand. But as he read, a chill crept down his spine. Sarah's grandmother had been different, too. The diary spoke of strange occurrences, of premonitions, and an uncanny ability to know things she couldn't possibly have known. The last entry, dated just weeks before her death, spoke of a gift passed down through the generations, a gift that came with a terrible price. Mark stumbled down the attic stairs, the diary clutched in his hand. He found Sarah in the nursery, Emily asleep in her crib. Sarah was crying, her face pale and drawn. "I know what she is," she whispered, her voice filled with fear. "She's not my daughter, Mark. She's something else." Mark opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He looked at Emily, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. Her eyes were open now, fixed on him with an unnerving intensity. And in that moment, Mark knew that his life would never be the same.